testing, and we spent $20,000 in genetic testing and counseling. We found out that we were both carriers of cystic fibrosis, and they never tested or looked out for classic lactosemia, which is like a typical screening on newborn screening. It's been on the newborn screening since 2004. And if you go to New York will test for it. There's no standard. So that was like the first opportunity where we could have had early intervention, where when she was born, immediately switched her to soy milk. Galactosemia is like diabetics. Diabetics can't have sugar. Penelope cannot have milk sugars, and milk sugars become toxic. And when you're breastfeeding, obviously you're putting your kid into a toxic overload, which results in a metabolic crisis. Your body is shutting down. So that was the first intervention that was missed. The second one was the doctor got a late result for her newborn screening, and it was late. And then the doctor, we were called in. It was, by that time, it's 8 days, and 8 days I had been breastfeeding. And she tells us she could possibly have galactosemia, but I really don't think she has galactosemia. It's more likely that this is a false positive. So she sent me home, and in an hour after arriving home, my baby was dying in my arms. So again, another early intervention that we have in place but wasn't utilized. So I'm a nurse, so I had to, that was my first start in being my daughter's own nurse. My husband rushed me to the nearest hospital, and we didn't call EMT because I knew it would be too much time. So I took care of her in the backseat while we drove there. It was extremely traumatic, and just things happened so quickly. We got there. They said, this is rare. We don't know how to treat her, so you have to go to the next children's hospital, which was like 30 minutes away. The 30-minute drive there was awful. She was crashing, and they have a little video monitor, and they were telling me everything that was going on, and I'm a nurse, so it's like I really know what's going on. And we get there, and we have this amazing team, and our geneticist, Dr. Binky, saved her life and said, yes, she has classic lactosemia. And I remember being there and asking them, is she going to survive? Is she going to be okay? And Dr. Binky said, we've done everything that we possibly can do. And there's nothing I can really say to make this better, but she's going to have to fight. And he's like, there is a possibility that she could die. Her body has completely shut down. This is a picture I took of myself. I keep this because this was a picture I took, and I thought it was going to be the last picture I ever took of my baby. And it is such an emotional picture, and it brings so much trauma to me because I remember at that time, I will bring purpose to this. I am a nurse. I know the medical field. I don't want any other mother to have to go through this. And that's why it's like I'm here today to advocate for this, because we have things in place that can create early intervention. And one of my first pediatric children, and it's like almost like a God thing. Like, why did I have this as my first pediatric child? My first pediatric child as a nurse had a very rare genetic disorder too. And the mother lost their baby the first time around. They were offered genetic testing after. And so her second baby was born and was able to be provided with care because they had early intervention. It's like, how many babies have died, or how many rare genetics are not getting that early intervention. So rare disease is not easy, and because of my medical background, I can see a lot of gaps, and I believe that our experiences of being in the system can really help alleviate some of those. My daughter ended up having seizures a year after birth, And then a year after that, we found out she had the Chiari malformation and we had to have brain surgery that week. And while we were having brain surgery that week, they accidentally gave her milk. And milk is like, for her, is like giving sugar to a diabetic, and there's no cure. So while we were there, I addressed the team, because I'm a nurse and I know how this works. And I said, what can we do for next time for this not to happen? So when another patient with galactosemia comes into your children's hospital, that it won't happen again. And he says, there is no electric medical system that can prepare somebody for a rare disease like hers. There's no way to prompt the doctor, the nurse, the pharmacy to say that she's allergic to galactose and lactose, because they will always assume that it's a lactose intolerance and not a diabetic, like you could put them in a diabetic coma. You're putting her in a galactosemia coma. So it's stuff like that where there is this wonderful, wonderful article, The Economic Burden of Rare Diseases, and it's quantifying the sizable collection of burden and offering solutions. And in there, it talks about a study, and it was actually done by two different groups. This study pretty much correlated the same information, two different sources, and it said that the lack of intervention and support in rare disease causes the U.S. $1 trillion in costs, and that they only did 498 of the 7,000 rare diseases. So that could be a couple $1 trillion that we save in early intervention. As a nurse, early intervention saves lives, improves quality of life, and decreases financial burden for the patient, the hospital, the entire United States. So I really recommend reading that article, because it also gives light to solutions. Like, they highlight the idea that electronic medical records can bring so much research and information and continuity of care for people with rare disease. And there are a couple of bills here. I have stacks and stacks of paper on what we can do for rare disease. I have probably 8 different bills that we could go through, and I don't want to occupy your time too much. But the first one I want to talk about is the STAT Act, co-sponsoring the Speed Therapy Access Today Act. It's HR 1730/S670. And this will enact targetful, impactful, attainable policy reforms of the Food and Drug Administration to accelerate development of therapies across rare disease. I really support this. The FDA has the legal ability to create centers of excellence. They have created a center of excellence on oncology and have created milestones for treatment in cancer in the United States. So this act will help provide a center of excellence for rare disease. Another part of our story, which I'm going to highlight right now because I don't know how much time I have, but it's very important to me. My daughter is in a rare disease drug trial. We are in a drug trial with Applied Therapeutics. It's called AT007 is the drug. We started this trial probably 2 years ago, but because of COVID and because of her brain surgery, everything was delayed. So we started up in August. In August, she had tremors. She had balance, coordination, speech, motor, muscle, so many things wrong. Her development delay was bad. Like, we weren't planning on putting her into kindergarten next year. At the beginning of this year, everyone was on board. We're going to repeat pre-K and do a lot more early interventions and supportive care for this year. Fast forward to this January, we had an IEP meeting stating, let's put her in kindergarten this year. She can ride a bike. She can draw. She no longer has any hand tremors. She is now becoming a very typical 4-year-old, talkative, little, inquisitive girl. And the problem that I am having is that the FDA, under the 21st Century Cures Act, Title 3, in the section 3001, 3002, 3003, 3004, and I believe 6 and 7, state that the patient experience is very important and that it's included. And what I'm finding is that what the FDA is saying and what they're doing is very different. And when you Google PFDD meetings or PFDD experiences with the FDA, there is article after article after article saying, yeah, we're doing this. This is great. We love our patients and we want their care. I'm in a drug trial. No one has called me. I have called the FDA. I have sent emails multiple times, and every time they call me back, they say, we're not allowed to talk about this with you. This is proprietary information and it's illegal for us to talk to you about it. And I have saved all these emails giving a response. So the Benefit Act is the other act that I'm trying to get supported, where it will include an accountability level to the FDA that the patient experience is included. There is a way of quantifying patient experiences with surveys and other data, and it's unfortunate right now. We have this thing called accelerated approval pathway. The FDA, at the beginning of our trial, said we will do accelerated approval pathway using the biomarker data galactitol. As of right now, AT007 has proven that galactitol is decreased by 50%. She makes her own galactitol. So 50% when she takes it is completely taken away, and it's not becoming toxic in her body. So it's healing her brain. That's why she doesn't have any hand tremors anymore. That's why she is able to draw and be able to participate, because the progression of the disease has stopped. And this is a double-blind placebo. Nobody knows whether they're on it or not. In January, we were supposed to be off the placebo part of the trial and extend it, but the FDA put us in a partial clinical hold. There's like a lot of controversy around it. I'm not going to get into that, but our patient experience, we know who's on the drug and who's not, because it's benefiting us so much. So I really do support the Benefit Act, the STAT Act. This is another one that I believe will be life-changing. There's two of them. There's I'm sorry, Lindsay, the genetics, there's a genetics act.
Okay, Killian, it's the Access to Genetic Counselor Service Act.
Okay, I really believe in that. I believe that early intervention with genetic counselors can help provide supportive care that will decrease costs. There's also another act called HR 5989, Precision Medicine Answers for Kids Today Act. This is a demonstrative program. I believe it is supported by Representative Swalwell. And they are going to recruit 15 states to pretty much prove to insurance companies that with genetic testing, from the very get-go. So say if a child is positive on a newborn screening, genetics gets involved right away. A lot of times genetics waits for weeks, even years. On average, it takes 7 years for a rare disease to get a diagnosis. So this bill is a demonstrative bill, and I really hope that it passes, but I also hope that Florida applies for this application, because it will cover the costs of genetic testing and the genetic counseling for all the rare disease families that are triggered by a newborn screening, or there's a list of policies in there where it would trigger a genetic program to be involved with this patient's care. And I really, again, believe it will be funded, but we'll also get the coverage eventually for these types of early interventions. I don't know if there's anybody else on here who needs to speak. I don't want to take up everybody's time, because I could go on and on about all the bills. Or if there's questions.
Jillian, you're doing absolutely fabulous. I just want to recognize Representative Neal Dunn. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you or Sarah have any questions about any of the bills that Jillian proposed, please let us know.
So thank you so very much. I apologize for being late. Our votes are running late. It's what we do.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I can even see your face. Believe me, I'm grateful.
So you actually, you hit a note that matters to me. You talk about early intervention. I was a urologist, a surgeon, a kidney surgeon, and did in utero surgery. The most common in utero surgery is actually for hydronephrosis, and I did a number of those cases in my practice. And very gratifying to save those kids' kidneys, and also their lives. So no small thing. So I like the early interventions. Anything that has anything to do with healthcare and precision medicine, I'm all ears. Sarah is my health LA. She's there you are. And she likes she's there.
Earlier speaking, but I don't have children, but hearing your story was just, you have been so strong for your family, and not everyone should have to go through that. So thank you for sharing. I know it's very personal.
Very fortunate to have a nurse like you in the family.
I know. And you know what? The geneticist always says that. Every time I see him, he's like, if she didn't have you as a nurse, she wouldn't be here.
There's some real truth in that, as you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
A good nurse is a great thing to have.